Good morning. There's no mail delivery here, but some of the yesterday's mail was still lying here on the floor. Looking at this one, it says, Dear Mr. Carney, my brother-in-law is a lawyer, spelled L-I-A. If your doctor, my lawyer brother-in-law tells me that if your doctor removes your appendix without your consent, you can charge him with sideswiping.
It is a voice of unmistakable tone and texture, a voice so familiar to so many that even now when you hear it again, it simply doesn't seem possible that it's gone. Every weekday morning, the radio delivered his humor and insight, that comforting voice providing temporary escape from our days of humdrum and clutter. He brought out the stars and shined for his city all day. And it was his city, and he owned a part of us all. Jack Carney became the best of friends with everyone who listened. 14 years ago next month, Jack Carney settled into his seat and chatted into a KMOX microphone for the first time. That day would become a broadcasting milestone. The early courtship in a two-way love affair with St. Louis, and the first hint to listeners that this on-air relationship would be special and lasting. It didn't last long enough, and in November, when he was suddenly gone, an entire city grieved. But the sadness soon gave way to memories that always began with a smile.
Fella comes home, his wife says, I've discovered oil on our property. He says, that's great, now we can buy a new car. She says, I think we better get the old car fixed. That's where the oil seems to be coming from. It wasn't worth doing the first time.
John Francis Carney Jr. was an only child, born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1932. His family moved to Los Angeles 8 years later, and in the early 50s, Jack enrolled at UCLA with dreams of becoming a lawyer. One broadcasting class changed all that. Instead of a career before the bench, an apprehensive Carney chose to sit behind a microphone.
He fainted. He said it wasn't even live, and he fainted. And I asked him, well, what happened then? He said, it's just a matter of getting used to it.
Jack got used to radio despite his opening night faint in Tucumcari, New Mexico. It's a long way from there to St. Louis, where the broadcasting career reached stardom and Jody married the star.
He said you were the one true love of his life. But he also said that his life was broadcasting. Did that ever bother you?
Never bothered me at all. I knew that was his life. No one could deny that he had that talent, that he would have had that natural talent. And if he didn't use that, I don't know what kind of person he'd be.
He did just about everything in radio, in small towns and big cities. Galveston, Atlanta, Dallas, to the wilds of civilized Boston and the studios of WIL in St. Louis. It was a rock and roll station in '58, but Bob Osborne remembers that WIL's flexible format let the DJs develop their personalities. Jack Carney became a local character.
Carney pulled a trick on me one time in Tower Grove Park. And it was a cold night, and there were the usual romancers, and the windows were steamed up, and he said, Bob is out there somewhere. And he said, just knock on every window and see if Bob is in there. And if so, he'll give you a free record. Well, we got a lot of people angry, but we had a lot of people talking about us. It was funny.
A $100,000 salary wooed Carney to WABC in New York, but the music format upstaged Jack Carney, and he soon left. San Francisco was next, and it was here that Real Talk Radio let loose the real Jack Carney. He also hosted a talk show on San Francisco television, but California of the late 60s was too much, and he soon came home to St. Louis, where the dynasty took form. By the mid-1970s, Carney's KMOX radio show attracted stars and sausage makers alike.
You have been successful in the sausage business. You haven't brought back Big Bad John for almost a year.
My life would be a success if I had done nothing in the world but have the good fortune to run into you.
You really mean that?
No, God, I don't mean that.
Well, we met on the air. And I went in and we working on the sausage thing and doing promotion and getting all the free airtime you could. And I went in and I was dog tired. I mean, dog tired. Because, you know, we were on kind of early, and the old saying that says you can't hoot like an owl all night and soar like an eagle all day. Well, I think I'd been hooting and I wasn't ready to soar. So I went into the studio, and here's this guy, and I'd heard a lot about Jack Carney. Well, I went in there, and he just started slashing like this, and I thought, well, listen, if you're going to stay here, you better wake up, Dean. And it was like that from every time that I was ever on the air with the great man.
From then on, whenever Jack Carney talked to Jimmy Dean, there was magic on the air. The ribbing was nonstop and spontaneous, but it never concealed their genuine and mutual affection.
We chewed each other up, the worst in the world. I've had more people come up to me and say, you will never know how much I enjoyed you and Carney. Well, it developed into something a lot more than two people on the air.
Nobody tells me anything bad about Jack Carney. Is there anything bad about Jack Carney?
Oh, yeah, certainly is. He had the worst rug in the world. If he would just have taken it off and shook it once in a while, it would have been fine.
We have exciting guests this week. We have Phyllis Diller and Joan Namath. Which one are you?
I'm Phyllis.
Oh, I should have known that the whole time.
We both wear pantyhose.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, he was a man who was so brilliant that he didn't let life operate him. He operated life.
This is Phyllis Diller's other side, out of character, serious, drawing up memories not of slapstick and cornball, but of poignant times and tomato preserves.
Tomato preserves, it's like, it's you put it on toast in the morning, you know, but no one's ever heard of it, and it's so good. He knew that I loved this, and do you know that he put these up himself, or had them done, and sent them to me.
Just to be thoughtful, then he'd find the one thing that was
those
special.
Little teeny things, you know, you just don't forget those things. Most people don't take the trouble.
Phyllis Diller's here. Good morning. Well, I should say Bo.
Oh yes, Bo Derek, Bo Diller.
Bo Diddley.
You see, I am
Bo Belinsky.
No, get it right,
Yeah.
Jack. I am the Bo Derek of the Geritol set.
Mitch played in the pit the night that they did the War of the Worlds.
With Orson Welles,
Yeah, and scared the pants off of people from coast to coast. And in the studio, you never knew it.
We never knew it until the police came in. I came to conduct the symphony, and they said, you have to be on the Carney show. And I went in and I said, hey, that's the Carney I know. And of course, I found out later that he's the hottest thing St. Louis ever had.
Mitch Miller met the hottest thing in St. Louis in San Francisco. They hooked up again, became close pals, and wound up vacationing together in the Cayman Islands. Carney was emceeing one of the cruise ship's events, a beauty contest of sorts, and he coerced his friend Mitch into being a judge.
Like all cruises, you know, there were very few beauties. But they entered it in the spirit of fun, and Jack did it in the spirit of fun, yes.
Wait just a minute. Is she telling the truth, Tiki Jack?
She certainly is, young Rob.
The first day I met Jack was in the spring of 1975. I had been working doing the sports on the morning drive time program with Bob Hardy and Rex Davis. So I'd come in at 6 and leave at 9, and as I was leaving, his show was just beginning. And one day I was walking down the hall, and he beckoned to me to come in, and I couldn't believe it. Jack Carney was going to have me on his show. And he started by asking me some questions about baseball. He said, I heard you've got a pretty good memory. And he asked me a bunch of baseball trivia questions. And I remember that first day, after he'd asked me some baseball questions, he had to do one of his commercials for a fur company. And he said to me, hey, how'd you like to put some money into a fur coat? And I said, the only obvious thing you can say in that situation, I said, I'd prefer to take some money out of a fur coat, which is not one of the all-time witty lines. In fact, I think probably Groucho said it 50 years ago. But Jack got a little twinkle in his eye, like he thought that was pretty good. And it seemed like we hit it off.
From that first day forth, the veteran called the rookie young Bobby Costas.
To this day, people call me young Bobby Costas, and I don't know. People from St. Louis do. No one in New York or anyplace else does. But I know that they say it with affection because Jack said it with affection, and it all comes from Jack.
He would do things on the spur of the moment.
Besides his nickname, what Costas got from Carney was the confidence to be himself and show his own quick wit on the air. His career was rising fast, even beyond Carney's, from local radio to network television. But to Jack, he was always young Bobby Costas. 3 days after his mentor died, Bobby anchored the eulogy.
Whatever success I may have had, I think that he was largely responsible for it, both in a practical sense of just putting me on the air, and also in an intangible sense with the confidence and the good feeling he gave me about myself.
Costas was only one member of Jack's radio family that included engineers, researchers, resident comics, and a KMOX cleaning lady. A special tenderness for Miss Miriam Blue elevated her from the dust mop to the microphone, where she gave common sense advice to plain and common folk.
Hiya, Toots.
How's Jackie?
How are you today, Miriam?
Oh, all is well.
When Miss Blue died 2 years ago, Carney took it hard.
There was a great, deeper devastation when he learned that she was so ill. It was awfully hard for him to handle.
Katie Slade was Jack's secretary for 5 years and watched over the radio family through bad times and all times. She says she couldn't have asked for a more caring boss.
He was just super. I don't think any employee was really just one of his crew per se. Their whole families were.
I loved it because it was unexpected. Every day was a surprise, really, and I like that. I like to work with him like that. It depends on the mood, because some days I wouldn't be happy with his remarks.
Colin Jarrett, Jack's engineer, calls them remarks, those Carney zingers he aimed even at the people working his shift. Producer Frank Pulaski was often Jack's target. Jack was constantly nagging Frank to go on a diet and get a date.
Been a bachelor all my life and started working with Jack for 6.5 years ago. And Jack was always asking me, well, who are you going to, or when I have this little thing over at my house, who are you going to bring? And a lot of times I said, well, Jack, I'm just going to come by myself. He says, what? Come on, I'll fix you up. I says, please, Jack, don't fix me up with anybody. And from there, on the air, he'd spontaneously bring up. I says, by the way, Frank, have you got a date for my thing? I says, no. He said, okay, fine. Anybody out there in Radio Land like to do me a favor and give my producer a date?
Jack's listeners didn't mind the favors. They sent letters and gifts. They adored him. Sponsors willingly paid top dollar to have Carney's convincing voice pitch their products to the Carney faithful. It is estimated that his program alone accounted for 1/4 to 1/3 of KMOX AM's total revenue. Carney's annual income was said to be between $300,000 and $1.5 million. He commanded big bucks because he delivered a big audience. He delivered because he was special. Close friend Joe Sullivan, the former Cardinals general manager, remembers.
St. Louis Cardinal football fans are unique. They really are. Well, wouldn't you say that, Joe?
Oh, I think they have to be unique after what we went through last winter time and after what the fans went through. For them to come back and be almost 100% on season ticket renewals makes them unique.
I was in Barnes Hospital, and I had had a heart attack, and I was in an intensive care room, and couldn't have any visitors. And there was a knock at the door one afternoon when my wife Joan and I were in the room alone. There was a knock at the door, and the door came open, and there was a man in a priest's outfit. He had a Roman collar and a black suit. And he came in and he said, you didn't think I could get in here to see you, huh? You thought those signs of no visitors and all that intensive care stuff would keep me out? Well, here I am, Father Carney, in to bless you, my son.
Oh, the birthday party.
Oh, yes, the birthday party.
Which one was that, Harry?
The one, he he had a telegram sent me from Teddy Roosevelt for the vacation. Had a great time at San Juan Hill.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah.
I don't think I have ever had a better friend than Carney, ever. I was in the hospital. I was Faith Hospital. I had some flu, that's all, and a little bit of it. And Jack came out every night. I said, don't come way out here. That's way out on Ollie Street Road. I said, just forget, call me. No, you're sick. I was there 7 days. Every night he was out there at 7, 8 o'clock, staying for an hour. But that was friendship, don't you know? You don't have much of that, really.
The old friends, the radio staff, the Hollywood names, they all shared themselves with Carney, and he shared it all with his audience. The radio listeners who eavesdropped on his conversations felt a personal closeness to this public personality. But Jack's private side belonged to Jody, his wife of the last 5 years.
My life really surrounded Jack, and I wanted it that way. I wouldn't have had it any other way. He never left me out. He would take me to sponsor calls, to dinner with different celebrities, and everything we did, it was together.
Jack met Jody Morioka at a party in 1975. They went out together soon after, but their first date was an auspicious beginning.
He picked me up, and we went to the Tenderloin room for dinner, and then we went over to his home. And as we walked in the door, I asked to go to the ladies' room. He showed me where it was, and when I came back, he was sound asleep on the couch, still in his coat, and I just could not wake him up.
Perhaps out of embarrassment, Jack didn't call back for a year. But when their relationship was renewed, they became inseparable. In 1979, they discussed marriage, and in his own inimitable style, Jack arranged a Las Vegas wedding.
It was kind of a surprise when we went there. The person who was going to marry us, I didn't realize was a woman, and she had a beehive red hairdo this high with a white streak going through it. When I went up to the altar, I started laughing, and I couldn't stop.
After the honeymoon, Jack decided it was time for the two of them to make a house of their own. He sold his apartment at the Chase Park Plaza. The buyers, sex therapists Masters and Johnson.
Jack always said that they were just there to continue his research.
Jack and Jody Carney spent most of their 5-year marriage renovating this large and gracious home. Jody calls Jack a frustrated interior decorator and says the decor mostly reflects his wide range of tastes, from Jack Carney the sophisticate to Jack Carney the handyman.
He bought every tool I think there is. One time we had a large tire pump in our den for 4 weeks because he liked to show it off.
From tire pumps to rare paintings, from his prized book collection on President Kennedy to the doorbell that could whistle Dixie, Jack collected anything that struck his fancy and wove the trinkets together to make his house his home. Ivory carvings and an elephant's foot are among the souvenirs in one room decorated from their travels in Africa. But the Carneys went on safari with cameras, not guns. The man on the radio loved animals.
I don't know if I should say it or not, but sometimes I feel like I'd rather be with these animals than to be with humans.
May Reed lived here alone with no animals until Jack Carney and the Humane Society sent over a dog named Jonathan.
You don't have to be rich or have a lot of money and dressed and all that for an animal to love you. They love you no matter what you got. I don't know what I'd do without them.
It was Carney's idea to match lonely older people with dogs and cats nobody wanted. The Humane Society calls it golden friendship. Sue Gassner of the Humane Society calls Carney their greatest supporter.
The Humane Society is very proud, but it could never have happened without Jack Carney. Could never have happened.
Jack Carney's love for animals was no match for this racetrack full of kids. These pupils are from St. Joseph Institute, a school for the deaf. Sister Anna Rose says Carney learned about her special students 20,000 feet up.
He met one of our pupils on a plane, and he was so entranced with this little boy when he saw that he could talk. He just couldn't believe it.
The man with the natural ability to communicate was awestruck by the way these children struggled for every word. What came so easily to Jack Carney was a tedious learning process for them. He began helping the St. Joseph Institute however he could.
The biggest thing he did for us was advertise our Christmas cards. And that was just simply wonderful because we started out selling about 3,000, and last year we sold over 100,000.
Carney became a regular St. Joseph fundraiser, on and off the air.
This is the last letter that I received. It was dated November the 12th. It said, "Dear Sister Anna Rose, thank you for the Christmas cards. That was very sweet of you. And you know that we send only St. Joseph Christmas cards every year. You forgot to enclose a bill. So I tallied the total and am enclosing a check." Now the bill would have been $56. He sent a check for $1,000. "If there is any change, I know you will put it to good use for the children. Jody and I love you, Jack." God love him for loving us.
I wanted to lead a parade, and they offered to put me in their parade, the mayor of Florissant, but way in the back. And I want to be up in front, so I said, well, the hell with you, I'll have my own parade.
Jack Carney threw a parade for himself, but everyone was on the guest list. There was just one rule. You could never have been in a parade before.
We qualified that at the end because if it had all been people who'd never been in a parade before, we wouldn't have any bands.
The band showed up, and so did most of St. Louis, it seemed. Called the No One Ever Asked Me to Be in a Parade Before parade, this was the first of what became an annual event.
2 years ago, the Parade of the Virgins was held here in the park. You remember those two girls.
Live from the stage of the fabulous Fox Theater at Grand Center in Midtown St. Louis, Missouri, KMOX Radio proudly presents The Jack Carney Show.
Another event that showed off Carney and a newly renovated landmark was the opening of the Fox Theater. Carney took his radio show there for a week, and during at least part of it, Carney was in hot water. The Federal Communications Commission investigated whether his Live at the Fox broadcasts had indeed been all live. It seems some had actually been pre-recorded. Over the years, there were other lapses. The FCC also insisted Carney shorten his rambling commercials and make them distinct from program content. And on another occasion, Carney used a national columnist's material without his permission. But through it all, his popularity never faltered.
While you're standing, we're going to take a collection. Stay right there. Thank you.
He just sits there and laughs. He doesn't say anything, you know.
The laughter still drifts down from the third-floor recording studio in the house where Carney lived. The routine hasn't changed much over the last few months. Producer Fred Zalanko still drops in to write and produce comedy shows for radio. But it's just not the same without Jack here.
Jack was always carrying the show around his head, always looking for an opening story in the morning, music to play, people to talk to. It was a 24-hour thing.
I think he knew every joke there was. I don't think anybody could tell him a joke that he didn't know. And he kept a little file card, and he would look at it just in case he needed one in the morning. But mostly got it from friends, and people would run up to him and tell him a joke, and he'd remember it. He said, well, you'll hear that tomorrow morning.
Mornings without Jack are empty for Jody Carney, a widow at the age of 32. The house she lives in holds countless memories of parties and friends and good times, but mostly memories of her husband. Jack Carney left this house and most of his estate to his wife. His 2 children from his 2 previous marriages are contesting the will. Jody says she's still in shock over her husband's death. They were planning a return trip to the Cayman Islands, another visit to Mitch Miller's place, when it happened. Jack wanted to scuba dive in the Cayman's clear waters. He and Jody were taking scuba lessons together. It was during a lesson that the heart attack came. Jody was by his side.
I'm sure he was glad you were there. Did you get time to say anything to him that you wanted to?
No. In that respect, he really didn't know, and I'm very glad that he didn't.
Is there any one thing you would have wanted to tell him?
I think that's the thing you can say about Jack's life. He said what he wanted to say, and now he didn't wait until a time when it was too late. Everything he said would have been no different.
emergency gas furnace can save you up to 30% on your energy bill, Vern. Yeah, a new...
Dear Jody, I felt as if I knew you as I would know the wife of a friend even though we had never met. Jack filled my kitchen every morning with his zest for life.
Jody Carney still gets letters from people who miss Jack, people who had met him only through the radio. The outpouring of emotion has subsided, but it's never really stopped.
I don't feel sorry for myself. I feel very lucky that he was part of my life, as I think a lot of the people in the letters do. That I guess he gave so much of himself to people.
I think he made everyone feel marvelous.
When you think of Jack Carney, you'll smile.
I'm sure that I would have told him I loved him a lot more often than I did.
I can't tell you how much we really loved each other. I can say there aren't words to say that he showed me so much love that I shall always remember. That's what I'll always remember.
We bought a piano. It's kind of Jody's Christmas present. We've always wanted to have a pretty piano. How do you like the way the store looks? You want a Santa Claus in the back? You get the red suit, and I'll sit in the back and ho-ho for you. Goodbye.